And good evening to everybody. Welcome to round 3 of season 6. I was in fact streaming all by myself here. I hadn't hit the go live, so my apologies. Luckily we still have 10 minutes of qualifying to go as we keep an eye on the current pole holder, Junior McCall, in his ATK Mercedes. As we look at that team standings for, as it currently stands, Hybrid Academy dominating the top of that pack. Within the top 10, they have 4 teams entered. The top 2 being Team Velocity and Team Stealth, followed by ATK Academy. 4th place is Hybrid Community Team, then Retro Neon, apologies, followed by Retro Esport. Yet another hybrid team in the form of Hybrid Academy Team Force. BWR Slots is in 8th position, RDSA Academy in 9th, and in 10th position we're sitting with Retro Solo. In the top of the order, we still have Junior McCall, followed by Johannes Greiling. All 4 spots dominated by the AMGs, with the 5th spot held by the only Honda on the field, driven by Paul Gerber, holding that flag high there. A lot of these drivers having partaken in the 24-hour Kyalami endurance race put together by Pure Storage and Raceface over the weekend. It was a rather interesting event. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I have been notified that I need to get my eyes tested, as I don't seem to recognize the color blue. But when you're out there, I think the main idea is just to stay on the track, try and keep it clean, and try and last that full 24 hours. What a task that was, but thoroughly enjoyed it. Can't look forward, or can't wait for the next one. Daniel Rowe now coming out in his McLaren to try and put in his best lap time. So far his best being a 1:26.547. It's just over 5/10 behind the current pole position leader, Junior McCall. Rowe trying to warm up those tyres so he can try and put in a fast lap as quickly as possible as we get closer to that 5-minute mark. A little bit of swaying back and forth. Welcome to everyone on the live stream. Ken, apologies, yeah, if I was keeping an eye, I might have been able to click that go live a little bit sooner. Mad Panda in support of BWR. Oh dear. So that won't be the lap, as Rowe very effectively gets off the track pretty quickly, showing a little bit of experience. Mr. Edison had himself a fantastic qualifier last week, landing in pole position, and unfortunately was one of those that had a bit of a tussle in the first corner. One of the victims, so to speak, of wet weather and T1 overzealousness. Just a big fan, indeed you are, Mr. Ken A. Always good to see you here. Idle supporters out in the stands in the virtual world. Would have been great to hear some cheers coming from your side, but we'll just get some cheers through the commentary side of things, or through the comments box. Edison seems to be the highest position Aston at the moment, with Ottens and King sitting a little bit further down the pack in 12th and 13th respectively. Mr. Edison decides he's now going to take that one back to pits. As we now get into 2.5 minutes, we still have Junior McCall sitting in pole position with his 126.028, followed by Greiling with his 126.169. Morgan McCall sitting in third with his 126.238. So from 1 through to 14, all sitting in the 126s, with roughly about 0.8 of the difference between them. And the remainder not too far behind, sitting within the 127s, low 127s that is. So with 1 minute to go, I think we're getting close to the end of the stint. We shouldn't see too much movement across the board. I'm not seeing too much gains. Isherwood probably, and as I say that, he goes from a 3/10 up, shoots up to 1.5 seconds better than his previous time, so we might see a bit of a jump with Isherwood going up the ranks. Isherwood racing for Retro Electro. I'm sure he's going to want to help his team maintain that top 10 spot. No, in fact, Retro Electro is not in it, so I'm sure he would want to help his team get into the top 10. The only 3 retro teams in the top 10 is Neon, Esports and Solo. Bit of work there to do for his team, Isherwood. No, unfortunately, Isherwood was not able to put that lap time in. So we now sit with Junior McCall in pole position, Greyling in second, Morgan McCall in third position, Johan Bego Grobler sitting in fourth, Kevin Barber in fifth, Christopher Redloff in sixth, Daniel Rowe in seventh, Paul Gerber sitting in eighth, Luke Addison in ninth, Dwayne Hall in 10th. And we are now on the starting grid. Just a reminder, it is an 80-minute race with 1 mandatory pit stop. In that pit stop, you don't have to change tyres in this season. What you do have to do is change, or at least add 1 litre of fuel. So if you need to do a bio break, you need to get some drinks, some snacks, refill that coffee, now would be the time. We will be kicking off in 2 minutes for what should be a very interesting race. And off we go. The guys are now going on their formation lap. Go out there, get their tyres nicely warmed up.
Well, I think we're in for an exciting race. Thank you very much for having me in the box. Sorry, I'm a little bit late to the party. Qualifying times very close, so lots of guys excited to see the GT3 cars taking on Donington, which as we experienced last night, Gareth. It's a incredibly tricky circuit to racing around, and also you a little bit leader. You got to play smarter around the circuits to be able to move up. So it's all about dealing with pressure and also being able to keep the car in a straight line. It seems to favor a little bit more of the front engines versus the mid engines. As proven with Junior McCall up in the front, as we saw Junior in the previous race battled a little bit. And now we've also got Wheeling in second place with the big AMG CDs. Absolutely going to be exciting as we see Jason Ishwood down at 18th place, absolutely ready for today. So let's see if he'll be able to climb his way up through the field.
No, absolutely. Agree with those AMGs dominating the top, sitting with, in essence, the top. Within the top 4, we're sitting with 3.
It's going to be absolutely incredible. Really looking forward to seeing how the drivers do with it. As you know, Donington, they didn't use circuit to set course for competency only, so our drivers haven't had much experience on it. And they had to basically learn on the fly. So let's see how they're going to do it, making their way around. They've got these tight hairpins they're going to get ready to go. So McCall has to be ready to rock and roll when it comes to the start and not get caught out by Cradling lying in second place. As we wait for the green flag to go. Drivers at the ready, green flag, and away they go. Now you don't want to be too tight on the inside into turn 1. As you can see, having to back out those running over the curb. But Cradling going right down the field, and that's just allowed Vago Krubler to move up. So Vago now on a hard push to climb up through the ranks. Absolutely fantastic. And then you've also got Tark Adam lying in 12th place, trying to move his way up. You can see some great side-by-side action, very tricky, and now it all starts bottlenecking. So the drivers have to be aware of their cars and where they are on the circuit in relation to each other. You can see Tark Adam unfortunately out-braking himself and coming into contact with one of the Aston Martins. A bit of a rough start for him, but as we said, tight circuits, it's all about playing it smarter, playing the long game, try and put the pressure on, and off to a bit of a chaotic start. Well, Adam moved up all the way into 11th place, now has to try and work his way back up after losing out of position. You can see now comes into a little bit of effect. The front engines are able to run those curves and carry a massive amount of speed, as it looks to be Otten's on the brakes, trying to get in. Has got the inside line, who can get the drive out. Ottens immediately closes the door, but hasn't got so much of a drive out compared to Adams. But he's trying to go defensive. Adams goes on the inside, and a bit of impact to the side of Ottens, but it hasn't unsettled him too much, and now to drag race it back to turn number 1. Absolutely incredible battle between front engine and mid engine. At the middle of the field, Junior McCall in second place, trying to catch up with his brother Morgan McCall. Now Morgan has been on an absolute charge at the moment. So I think a little bit of brotherly, brotherly competition is definitely going to be shown here. for this evening.
Absolutely, as we now see the AMGs taking the top 3 spots, now squeezing out the Bentley of Bego Grobler as the guys start settling in, getting themselves in a particular order. So as we see, the worm is still quite consistent, not too many breaks between that. As you mentioned earlier, not much space on this track. I mean, as we're coming up to this corner here, you know, there's very little space for you know, mistakes. The guys need to keep it tight. This track is fairly tricky, and to your point, not necessarily a track that everyone is very familiar with, being a fairly new track, so to speak, on ACC.
Absolutely, and it's a lot of setup work. What this track has compared to a lot of the tracks we see in the season is a lot of change in camber and undulations, but even to the point that you cannot lower these GT3 cars right down to where we find them more comfortable. You've got to run them a little bit higher, a little bit softer, just to make your way over and around the corners, and it makes it a bit of a challenge, if I can put it that way, because it does affect the aero. You don't have as much aero or air flowing underneath the car to help suck it to the ground as we used to. So they are a little bit loose, and we'll see a lot more of the mid-engines where they have to counter a lot of lift-off oversteer that they have mid-corners. So the front engines definitely loving the circuit. Mid-engines got a little bit more of a trick to try and keep it. But if you take a look at Bobby here, running in 5th place in the Ferrari, trying to keep up with a bit of an onslaught behind him of Radloff, putting massive amount of pressure on him. And now we're also getting reports that the pit window is now open. Now, this is where I've got to ask you a very, very interesting question, Gareth. As we saw last race, guys trying different things, from pitting in extremely early, literally when the pit window just opened, to, well, let's go right back to our little Honda, because that was the most amazing thing. That was Paul Herbert. In the final 9 minutes of the race, decides to get in the pits and get out. So he stayed on circuit the entire time, trying to make it out. We saw that it sort of worked. Do you think it would work like this? And also, another factor to consider, a lot of these drivers were practicing how to get in the pits, because I don't know if you had this problem last night. I turned right to get out the pits, not left. And the pit lane is going left out the pits. And it's also very, very tight. The final corner, you have to stick right up against the barrier to get into it. So it's difficult to get in. And it can catch you getting out because you are not quite used to it.
Well, I think, you know, depending on what the guys have planned up front, if they've given themselves enough fuel to possibly push to the end, I suppose they would try and make the call on the fly. Some, as I would probably do, if I need to put some fuel in, I'm going to stop halfway through. I'll try and make myself as light as possible, of course. But, well, we'll have to see. But it definitely adds a bit of flair come 40 minutes, because that's when we start seeing a lot of chopping and changing in the order. Guys taking advantage of trying to squeeze, you know, a couple of seconds in front of the next guy, or at least get ahead of the guy behind them. But yes, it will be interesting to see how they execute this evening, and possibly keep an eye on a trend. I think later on in the season we can start making calls as to who likes doing those late pit stops, and who likes to rather bring it in early and get out and just attack for the rest of the race.
And that's absolutely it. And we've also got to mention that a lot of the drivers that you see racing right now haven't had much time on the circuit, because they were practicing for a bigger event. And take a look at Bego Grobler going all kinds of wrong into the dirt with that big Bentley, as he's getting Barber putting massive pressure onto him. And he's putting pressure onto Krayling up in front. So definitely a nice race going on here. But going right back to it, the guys that did have an event beforehand, which you also participated in, which everyone was practicing for, and I think Donington was a bit of a forgotten thought after it, and the guys had to go from the sweeping curves of Kailani for 24 hours right down to racing here at the very, very tight Donington. It's Vega trying to go on the inside, hard on the brakes, gets past Grayling, but it's all about getting on the power, goes in immediately, shuts the door, goes to the middle of the circuit, absolutely fantastic. You can just see absolutely no space.
Oh dear.
Vega probably going all kinds of sideways thanks to that tap from the AMG of Grayling. But yeah, the guys practicing a lot for Kalami. They had the Kalami 24-hour on the weekend. And I know I checked to a lot of these drivers, they literally came down and said, we had to actually practice for the Donington. Damn. A lot of them were hoping that it would be an easier circuit, but Vega probably really not enjoying this circuit.
Absolutely. I think, as you mentioned, I think he's still got Kalami in mind. I know I, for one, did nothing but Kalami for weeks on end just to make sure that I can try and stay on track. And as I mentioned earlier, I've had some indications that I should probably have my eyes tested because I don't recognize the color blue. But, oh dear, Robler having a really bad evening of it as he struggles to get out of that corner and being a little bit unpredictable for the driver behind him. Unfortunately, causing a bit of an issue, and a little bumblebee behind the red Ferrari. Love that color scheme. But yes, that Kalami event was absolutely fabulous. I tell you, I'm really looking forward to the next one. The the effort put in by all of these guys that's on the track. I think almost every single one of them partook in the race in some shape or form. Many of them we obviously saw while we were out there. And most of the time, yes, we had to move out of the way for them. But such is life, such is sim racing. The various levels. I'm definitely not sitting in this level in pro. As I've mentioned before, the only way I'm going to get into the pro division is in the commentary box. So hence I'm here with you, doing what we love.
Well, I was the world's fastest back marker, and just to make you feel a little bit better, while looking at these pros putting in some impressive times. The blue flags for us in the 24-hour, I thought they were just signaling that we were getting fastest deltas through those corners. Damn, now you tell me that it's just because we were the slower cars. Damn.
it had something to do with you have to move out the way. I'm not quite sure.
Oh, damn, now you tell me. Jeez, I thought I was getting fantastic times. You go see all the blue flags, I was thinking, yes, fastest delta, here we go.
Well, let me tell you, it is quite tough every 2 seconds just hearing faster car behind you. Yes, I understand. Every car is faster than me. Just leave me alone.
You pull the Kimi Raikkonen. I know what I'm doing. That's what it was. But absolutely, it was a fantastic event. A lot of the drivers practiced for it, then coming to Donington here, finding the challenge. And you could just see, a bit of rough going. Grayling goes on the brakes a little bit late. Has to avoid Adolf, who's had a difficult time to get by. Right behind him, Daniel Rowe of the hybrid team, actually having a fantastic time, and he's really pushing hard in that McLaren. Johannes Grayling of Retro Slipstream trying to utilize the front engine horsepower and able to run over the curbs with that big Mercedes. Now, what we found is it's a very tricky car that you have to deal with a serious amount of understeer that it comes with. As soon as you can get over that, you've got a very fine threshold before you have a bit of oversteer, as we see Radloff going a little bit scattered as he tries to make it back to the point. You see, extremely, extremely tricky to keep it going. Masters also pushing hard in the Porsche. Now we saw Masters was doing well the last race, able to put on some massive amount of pressure, and now running in 6th place. He's looking to do it once again onto the back of Daniel Rowe, get that McLaren. But a 4-horse train going on here for 3rd, 4th, and it's 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, all duking it out. And there's also another corner we've got to be careful of. That little chicane is so easy to get a track limit warning. Too many of those, and you land up with a 30-second penalty or a drive-through penalty, which a lot of the drivers have experienced. I can tell you, it's not a funny time to get that when you're in the middle of a heated battle like this one.
Absolutely, especially when the guys are struggling with the lines a bit. You can definitely see that they're just relying on their pure racing abilities. as they're trying to navigate their way around the track. Definitely not as consistent as some of the other races that we've seen, but again, Donington being a fairly new track, as we saw Keegan Masters pushing out Rowe a few corners back, just squeezing him out, doing the friendly teammate thing.
Absolutely, I think it's at this point it's survival and all about playing follow the lead to get as close as you can, and at the same time wait for a mistake. You can be aggressive and go for a pass, but you're taking a massive gamble as it's got lots of straightaways, which doesn't favor the Porsche. But you've got to all just keep it together. As you can see, Armis van Dijk and Black Widow Racing just getting all kinds of unsettled as he battles to keep that Lexus in check. The Lexus, as we know, a very stable car to race, so it tells you how hard these drivers are pushing and what they're trying to accomplish. The one person I'm just taking a look on our list, I don't see Morgan McCall. No, Morgan McCall is way down in 21st position and in the pits. He was leading the race, so his brother Junior McCall has taken first place. So that's a bit of an upset. I wonder if Morgan lost it and the car decided to go see the rest of Donington and the crowd, which is highly possible.
It is rather interesting. It's only the 8th lap that he pulled into the pits. Don't know if he'll be coming out again, but yeah, it's a bit of a pity.
Well, that tells you what the circuit can do. You know, it's taking our experienced drivers to the absolute limit to one, get those incredible lap times, two, be able to keep the car on check. I mean, some of these corners, if we just take a look, braking hard into second gear, you've got to try and keep the power on, as Paul's trying to do with that Honda, trying to deal with a bit of understeer that the car inherently has around the circuit. So he's trying to do everything. As we saw in the last race, he really pushed that a little bit late. There we go.
Yes,
Bit of a mistake made. Masters having to try to do everything. You can see getting pushed way on the outside onto the gravel trap and having to slow down just before he gets into the dirt. It's absolutely detrimental to your race. You have one mistake and that's it. As Paul Herber goes and hits the brakes a little bit too late and loses out the drive as well. And that's immediately put Masters back into the picture here. What this track has done is it said, for all the practice that you've had, for all the driving experience that you have as a GT3 sim racer, well, put it behind you because you're all now on a level playing field. It's only been out for a small amount of time. You've only had a certain amount of practice on it. And this track will really test how you can control the GT3 car, especially for an hour and 20 minutes. Now going on an hour and 4 minutes left in this race. So very, very interesting and a nice inclusion. I know that a couple of drivers weren't happy, thanking myself, for seeing the circuit due to what it is, but I can tell you, if you can drive Donington, there's not many circuits that you can't drive.
Well, I must say there are some nice fun straights on the track that you have to have a pair to pull it off and go straight through and hold the speed. But definitely a fun track if you get the hang of it. But at the moment, it seems the guys are struggling a little bit with some of these corners, just getting a feel for it. I'm sure as we get into the later stages, they'll get a lot more comfortable with their lines and braking points. At the moment, they just not just testing themselves and seeing where their limits are, but I think they're also very cautious and cognizant of the fact that all the other drivers are also trying to find their feet or their brake markers, so to speak.
So try and find the rhythm, and you put it in the most flat terms. You've got to have a little bit of a head to be able to go around it. So you can see Keegan Masters pushing it a little bit too much in the Porsche, able to hold it, and on the turn for that, usually that goes equals one car going nose to tail, so you go bushwhacking. But you put it in a simple terms. You gotta have a pair. Now I think last night I left my pair in my purse back in the pits because what these guys are doing compared to what I was, it's absolutely crazy. I think half of the drivers have disconnected their brake pedal. It's all about yeeting it across the circuit for the youngsters to say. But it's absolutely fantastic driving. As we take a look at Max here, he's trying to get onto the back of Adam, who's now 16th place. Adam was moved up all the way into 12th, 11th, 12th place. Unfortunately, McLaren getting into a little bit of dirt, thrown down the field, and it shows you how close the cars actually are. One mistake, and you have to put you right down the field to an absolute terrible point in the race, and you've just got to try and claw your way back up through the field. Now, I know these drivers were averaging in practice on the practice server, averaging around about 128, 127 with a full tank, which is lightning quick, as we can see right there. Max doing a 127.8 as his time for his last lap, which is just incredibly quick around Donington. Anyone in sim racing and in real racing will tell you that is literally hanging it all out. As we go to Christopher Radloff doing 120 to be a 128, 126. And he's trying everything possible to keep it going. And see, just trying to settle the nose, trying to make that Mercedes stick through the corners. And I'm sure a few words are being said underneath that helmet, trying to will the car to just stick through the corners as a tail wants to come out on him as he pushes it to the limit. Radloff really showing what he can do. And now take a look at Masters going up on the inside of Paul Kerber. Paul now pushed out wide. Masters and Paul now to the drag race. Flat 4 versus flat 6. Let's see how it's going to go. Hard on the brakes. Paul Herber's able to go, but he outbrakes himself, lands into the marbles, and that's allowed Masters to get by. But Herbert decides it's not going to happen. Let's go for a drag race around number 2, and immediately has the door closed on him by Egan Masters. One thing I want to point out, that pit lane, that exit in the pit lane, everyone's just going slightly over it to gear themselves for turn number 1. Now when we start pitting and get cars coming out in a hurry, they're going to be aware that these guys are coming down that straight closer to 150, about 150 k's an hour before they have to stand on the anchors. There's not much room for you to get some time to just get back on the circuit as fast as possible. So they're going to have to give a little bit of leeway for the guys on the circuit to go by and then get back into the train. So another little aspect that's a bit tricky for Donington and the pit stop.
Something I think both the drivers going past the pit stop and those coming out, I suppose, would have to be extremely cautious, especially if it's something that they're not used to. It's something that is rather difficult, trying to get the right timing when guys come belting down that straight and you trying to squeeze in and get your little place back. If everyone was a Verstappen, would be okay, but I certainly am not one, so tend to struggle with getting that right timing, trying to get back into that crowd.
That's it. It's all about trying to keep it in check. I saw one of the guys going and saying microphone might be a little bit off, so hopefully this sounds just a little bit better. I do apologize for it, but absolutely incredible to see the guys giving it everything they got. Also, Paul Kerber on that in that Honda, really showing what it can do. The Honda's not being favoured too much in ACC, but the team Try Hard Racing.Pro, Paul Kerber is showing that the full Honda is a formidable foe to deal with in ACC currently, and being the special car, being the only Honda here in the Pro split for our GT3 season. I think it's absolutely incredible. And also taking a look, Morgan Paul jumping into the comments. Unfortunately, his race seems to be done, and had a little bit of a problem where the car jumped over a bump and not there. And unfortunately putting his race to an end. So that's unfortunate that it happens, but at least he's coming and joining us here in the comments to cheer on his brother Junior McCall, who's leading the race and managed to pull a 10.8 second gap over Crayling in second place. I mean, that's incredible. That, as you know, Darren, that is literally a calendar. He's literally sending a Christmas card back to second place at this point.
Absolutely, definitely got himself a healthy lead up front there. Very unfortunate that Morgan is out. It would have been nice to have seen a top 3 finish there for the McCall brothers. So the weight is all on Junior's shoulders now to keep that going.
We take a look at the hybrid community team. Luke Anderson having a lot of fun with the Aston Martin, and he's trying to keep it all in check as well. Hard on the brakes, and having a bit of a fun time trying to keep it all in check. A bit further down, we've got Max, who's chasing down the Kube, and let's see if he will be able to make up a bit of ground there. Right behind him, though, is Hannes Mafake and Jason Isherwood, who's chasing him down and really pushing as hard as they can to get onto the back, get pulled along, and try and climb up through the grid. The guys doing everything they can, really battling hard onto the brakes, and it looks like Hannes just outbraked himself into the weeds, and that has just allowed Jason Isherwood to move up and Ikube to move up. So there we go, Hannes. Sorry, that's Hannes that's moved up. That's Ikube that went late on the brakes with the Audi, and unfortunately going and losing out a massive amount of time. So definitely a right drive for him.
As we head down into just under an hour, so far no one has done any pit stops other than Morgan McCall, who is still sitting in the pits and obviously retired.
Alright, hopefully this is better. Change over to mic number 2.
Oh, there we go. The 87% packet loss went down to about 50%.
Oh, there we go. Close enough. When you got to do a bit stop as a commentator. Hopefully that's better, and I do apologize to everyone.
Well, unfortunately, still getting a bit of packet loss there, Steve. Seem to be losing you somewhat. But the race continues as we try and sort out some of our connectivity issues. Greyling sitting in second position, still hunting down McCall, who's created himself a nice little lead there over 11 seconds, and to gain that 11 seconds he's going to need a bit of luck. If McCall maintains his consistency, he will most certainly be continuing gaining that or increasing that lead over Greyling. As Rowe is sitting not too far behind Greyling in third spot. As Rowe has his real-life teammate Keegan Masters in his number 18 Porsche behind him.
Okay, let's see if this works a little bit better.
Oh wow, it's like someone just switched the lights on. Welcome.
What? Okay, right, so note to self, don't use software, just go straight plug-in. Alright, do apologize to everyone for that. My absolute bad. And definitely I will be standing outside for the rotten tomatoes to be thrown. But one thing that these drivers are doing is putting on an absolute show. Daniel Rowe really pushing hard in third place, trying to make up as much ground as possible. And the error in the comments comes. So absolutely fantastic to see the sim racing come alive. And Daniel Rowe up in third place with Keegan Masters 1.1 seconds behind, chasing him down. Chris Radloff lying in sixth place, who's on a major push going behind Paul Gerber. So this is going to be an interesting one. 52 minutes left of the race, and now we start to look at how the guys are going to plan their pit stop strategies, how they're going to be able to climb up through everything. So this is where the race starts turning and how they're looking to get up. As we could see, Barber down in 20th place has already pitted and now is going to run the full 50 minutes without needing to pit if he pitted and there was not a mistake done. So definitely a thing to keep out for. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the plans are with every single one of these drivers and the different teams, how they're going to work it out.
Yeah, so Bob obviously having to do a little bit of work through that pack. His best lap so far being a 1:27. So if you can get quickly back to that pace, then I believe he should be able to gain a few positions. But as you said, that we're coming into the pit window area with only Barber having gone in. We're going to start seeing a lot more going in as we get closer to that halfway mark. I for one again would have, if you have to put in fuel, then if it is mandatory, then why not split it? Have yourself your lightest vehicle for both parts of the race. Tariq Adams sitting in 13th position in his McLaren, driving for Hybrid Academy Team Velocity.
And going and picking the McLaren, beautiful purple colors, and definitely one of the standout colors for the season. We've seen a lot of teams pick out standout liveries and standout colors from PWSR with the iconic black and yellow, right down to Hybrid Academy with that purple and white. Can pick out the cars right around the circuit, and you know exactly which team is coming to hunt you down. Adam really showing what he can do. A bit further up of Kaike Racing is Ryan Ottens, who's chasing down long-term rival Bernard King and Christopher Radloff. So this is where it gets really exciting for them. And let's see if Ryan Ottens will be able to make up some ground. We saw in the previous race, Ryan Ottens had a bit of a rough run, unfortunately getting a slight collision on the rear and losing out a position. Now having to try and make up a bit of points here tonight at Donington, and he's really on a hard charge to try and make up the spaces right around. Hard on the brakes, trying to get the momentum, losing a little bit of ground to Bernard King and Christopher Radloff. Now Bernard King at the moment is utilizing the slipstream and getting pulled along by Radloff. So that's how they're able to get that little bit of a gap away from Ottens, and has to keep trying to go with it. The Kinetics SimWorks racing machine now looking to try and go maybe on the inside of Radloff. Every time he keeps leaning in on the right, trying to see if there's a gap or if there's a way to get by. So we'll have to see if that will be his plan in the long term. Sneak up on the inside, try and force Radloff to go out wide. But it looks like Radloff has got the car pretty settled through turn 1 to turn 4, and has managed to open up that little bit of a gap as they power their way through the field. And that's just allowed Ottens to get right onto the back of Bernard King, really pushing as hard as he can, trying to get into that toe, and you can see just losing out that little bit of ground compared to Bernard King. Bernard's just able to get on the power that fraction a little bit earlier compared to his competitor Ryan Ottens, and managing to pull away. Definitely, it's all on how do you set up the car, how you set yourself up for each corner here at Donington. And as we know, you make one mess out of one corner, it's going to be the next 3 corners that's going to pay the price. That's for sure, Gareth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As we've seen a couple of the guys struggling around the course. And Kai Racing, as we saw earlier, unfortunately this evening having dropped out the top 10. So I'm sure they're wanting to also put in a bit of a performance, get some points this evening.
And that's it. It's all about going for that driver and team championship. Because that's one thing we haven't touched on, is there's 2 types of championships that these guys are racing for. One, the driver championship, which everyone wants to win. As we see Mark Antle of Retro Slipstream getting it completely sideways and going and demonstrating his fast and furious Tokyo drift skills and where he should be in the next movie. We've also got the team points, which is all about getting the most amount of points, and that is another major championship which I think is a really good one, because it's all about trying to work together to get the most points. And even though it's fun to race your mates, you've got to think long term of how it's helping the team. And that's where you see a lot of guys who opt not to be too aggressive with their fellow drivers, but instead try to keep behind them and just power their way through till the end.
Yeah, as we see Masters and Barber, as well as Bego Grobler. Now all 3 of them having gone through the pits. I saw a little bit earlier, it seems Greyling, yeah, he's gaining a little bit more. He was earlier 11 seconds, then down to 10, now 9.7. So he seems to be gaining somewhat on McCall. I don't know if it's one of those cases, as we've spoken about before, when you're out on your own and you've got a lot of air in front and behind you, that you actually start losing the focus to push yourself as hard as you can. Or it could possibly be Greyling putting in the better lap times and just gaining on him. If we have a look, yeah, Greyling is in fact, his best lap time was a 1:26.967, which, well, it's right on the tail, just ahead of McCall. McCall doing a 1:27.009. But it's about the consistency it counts. It's maintaining those times, lap in and lap out, and it seems like Greyling is doing just that.
Well, we were talking about the track limits and getting the stewards from Max Verstappen's turn 14 and Jason Esherwood getting that drive-through penalty due to exceeding a track limits, which is an absolute nightmare and a half to have, especially in this last 44 minutes left of the race. The guys are having to now try and work out, one, when they're going to pit. And for Jason Esherwood, that's just going to be kicking himself good and proper for exceeding those track limits. And it really shows how he's struggling on the circuit. As we said, you've seen the best drivers get into the most difficult of situations. As Esherwood decides that he's not going to go into the pits. He's got 2 more laps before he has to go and do that drive-through. And that's where it gets into a very, very tricky situation. So just trying to get as much pace as possible, try and climb up as much as possible before he has to, 1, do his pit, and 2, go and do that darn drive-through. Absolutely, oh, my heart goes out to him. And hopefully everyone has fully fueled their cars, because, well, no one wants to have what we had last Thursday, Gareth, where you and I had our hearts ripped out and wanted to go and climb out the commentary box here and go and push a car.
I believe it was Skitter.
That's for certain.
That is it.
Yep.
That is it. Right at the death. He could literally smell that line in front of him.
50
the unfortunate thing
meters before the line.
Shame. I felt so sorry for him. He put in such a good race. And Isherwood, of course, he'll be wanting to climb that ranks, but he hasn't done his pit stop, and he has to do his drive-through. So the next time he goes in will not count for his pit stop. So there's 2 times that he needs to now get through that, which I'm assuming is going to knock him a fair amount back in that standings, with the only one behind him not having done a pit stop is Hannaberry. And there we go. He goes and serves his pit stop, or his drive-through penalty.
So let's see, is it going to be the drive-through? It looks like he's doing the drive-through now and might do the pit stop a little bit later. So let's see how it goes. And it seems like my commentary microphone bugs have been resolved for now. So definitely, I do apologize to everyone. And Alan, you would kick me. I'm on a fiber line. It's called working with software and having no idea what you're doing. That's for certain. But absolutely, Jason now back out. Now has to also consider when is he going to do his pit stop. Gareth, let's get a little bit of an insight from you. In this sort of situation, where do you feel, or when do you feel be the right time to do a pit stop for Jason Isherwood? He didn't lose out too much time with that drive-through penalty, but let's see, will he lose out? When do you think will be the correct time for him to go and pull in the pits, do his pit stop, and get back out, and minimize the amount of time lost in the race?
Well, we might find that he's actually done the fuel load based on coming in at the halfway mark. I think that's maybe why he decided to get that drive-through out of the way. Well, he actually only had 2 laps to do so, but I would anticipate him going into the pits on this next lap, as we see majority of them. I mean, now we're sitting with only the top 4 that haven't gone in. Everyone else is either busy serving or already served their pit stop. So I think the sooner the better, to be honest. No, he is in the pits. So he is, and as we see Otten's going past that pit exit, to your point that it's a little bit tricky. The guys probably aren't too familiar with it, almost having a bit of argy-bargy as they came out. As Otten's also doing it. Wasn't it? It was Radloff pulling a nice little drift there. It was beautiful.
Radloff going and showing the sideways action and showing beautiful car control. Fantastic 10 out of 10 drifting, but definitely not what you want to have when you've got an Otten right on the back of you who's really giving it everything he's got. I think at this point, Radloff is sitting with his heart in his throat and now watching his review mirrors as he's got an Aston Martin left, right and center of those mirrors. And you can see Otten is laying on the pressure good and thick at the moment, trying to go late on those brakes, and Radloff having to go very, very defensive. So I think Radloff, from going and taking a deep sigh after that slide, is now holding his breath until he can open up a bit of a gap between himself and Ryan Ottens in that Kai K racing machine. And I bet you that Team Kai K is going to be jumping and cheering on their pro driver at this point. And Radloff is having to really work double time to pull away from the mighty Aston Martin. Radloff really trying to keep it all together. Ryan Otten's falling a little bit behind. That's allowing Bernard King to come into play. So Bernard now putting the pressure onto the back of Ryan Ottens. So Ottens lost a little bit of ground, and that's allowed Bernard King to get right onto the back of him and push as hard as he can. And let's see, will Bernard be able to utilize this and put as much pressure on to force Ottens into a mistake? So we're going to have a bit of an interesting race here for 8th, 9th and 10th place. And we cannot forget about Anderson running in 11th as well. Now they've all done their pit stops, so it's all about just keeping on going right until the end. Taking a little bit further, a look further up through the field, Mark Ansel up into first place in that Ferrari of Retro Slipstream, and he hasn't done his pit stop as yet. Right behind him though is Mr. Skitter, who our famous Mr. Skitter, might I say, who's pushing hard, also hasn't done his pit stop. Hopefully he's worked out his fuel, part of BRS EKZ Motorsport. Sean Skitter doing everything he can. In third place is Junior McCall, who's leading on the charge after Morgan McCall's unfortunate retirement here at Donington. Morgan's already done the mandatory pit stop. Keegan Masters also in tow, about 4 seconds behind. Daniel Rowe, Paul Gerber, everyone's done their pit stop except for Mark Ansel and Sean Skitter. The two Ferraris trying to push it to the end. Gareth, are we going to see another Honda move coming out here? Final 9 minutes of pits before a pit stop?
Well, perhaps Skitter decided he's going to change his strategy for this evening and pull in as late as possible. Hopefully he remembers to add the extra 2 litres of fuel over and above what he might have calculated. I think my early days, I've had multiple races right after each other trying to be clever and keep it as light as possible. Always take extra.
Well,
don't be
Mark
shy.
Mark Ansel's in the pits as we saw him in a shot, and that's just allowed everyone to get by. And now it's on the charge for Sean Skitter in first place. And totally right. I think Sean Skitter went out and he said, listen guys, I think the Ferrari needs to have 122 litres in the tank, not 120. Just a thought. Yeah, I think there was a message sent to Ferrari.
Absolutely.
But he's leading the charge at the moment. First place has opened up a 3-second gap. Now, if he's worked it out correctly with his fuel and everything, a pit stop would take, I'd say maximum about 20 seconds for these final splash and dash moments. So he's got to open up a big gap to Junior McCall before he goes into the pits, if he wants to hold on to that first place. And as we saw just in shot when we're looking at Keegan Masters here, Sean Skitter has got Junior McCall right on the back of him, 2.4 seconds. And big shock front end of the field, and that is Grayling getting a drive-through penalty for Retro Slipstream. And it looks like, once again, track limits coming into play. As he was busy battling it out with Paul Gerber, he scored himself that drive-through penalty in the last 35 minutes of the race. He's opting just get it over and done with. And that's going to throw him right down through the field. Definitely not what you want to have. And we're seeing more and more of these little mistakes starting to happen towards the end of the race as the tires start to fall off the circuit, start to fall off, and drivers are starting to get worn down. This is a very busy track to go for an hour and 20 minutes on, and these cars become even more busy as time goes on. You can see little trains forming around all over, mainly for the back of the grid, and that's 13th place. Hall having a good run there with Bago Krobler and Grayling in 14th place. But that really goes and tells you what's happening right down the field. Christopher Radloff trying to keep it all together. Hopefully not going to get those super awesome drifts as we saw earlier, as he's got Hall chasing him down with that big giant Bentley. Nothing is more daunting than seeing that Bentley in your rearview mirrors, because Bentley goes over curbs and will go over you like it's absolutely driving on air. So definitely want to keep an eye out for the Bentleys coming out in force, and the Retro team really showing what they can do. And also you've got Bago Krobler going up on the inside, trying to push out wide, managing to get by. So now Bago taking a deep breath, going the side-by-side route, but still in a bit of a drag race. Now it's who's later on the brakes. and can get in. You can see Hall trying to fight back, side-by-side action once again. The Queen will be proud watching the Hybrid Academy team and the Retro Racing team having a great bit of fun there. And we see Sean Skitter in the pits now falling down the field as well. So what a massive, massive turn of events. Gareth, what do you think? Two ginormous Bentleys side by side in some of the tightest parts of this circuit. Hats off to the drivers.
Well, let me tell you, Radloff doesn't just have one Bentley behind him. It looked like he had a whole train behind him. But these two Bentleys giving each other a bit of gas as we go through the corners. Bentley being one of the cars suggested by old Eddie Francis from Monday Night Racing. When I first started racing, I thought I'll try the Porsche. Eddie's first recommendation was maybe you should try the Bentley. It's a little bit easier for the new guys, but absolutely solid in corners, over bumps, good on tires. It is actually just a fantastic vehicle.
It's good over bumps, good over cars, spectators,
everything.
Stray animals. You know, nothing stops the Bentley, and it's being shown it's quite a force here. But Radloff managing to hold them at bay with that GT3 AMG Evo, one of the new cars that have come through in the recent update, and it's glad to see that's getting lots and lots of love, what it deserves. Beautiful car, massive front compared to the other GT3 cars, but showing it's able to hold its ground in the right hands and proving that it can also be quite agile in a bit of a race. But this battle right here, Christopher Radloff, Bago Krobler, Kraling and Hall, big heavy front engine vehicles all duking it out on one of the tightest circuits this season for the GT3 championship. And I think every single one of these drivers are having an absolute jewel around Donington, that's for certain. And not being too mindful of the airplane that does fly over the circuit as well. One man who's just decided to check out of this race and decide that he's going to send a postcard to the rest of the field. Junior McCall, 8.3 seconds ahead of Keegan Masters, and is just keeping it nice and easy as he battles his way around the circuit. Absolutely fantastic. Seeing the ATK team just coming in and getting faster and faster is absolutely incredible. Junior also being one of the younger drivers in the category. Yeah, it's fantastic to see the young blood taking on the old blood and showing what he can do with a bit of support on the side as well. So absolutely brilliant to see it.
If I'm not mistaken, Junior McCall is something like 13 at the moment.
About 13 14,
years old.
Yeah, definitely.
Racing against some really good talent and holding that top spot quite comfortably. This young lad is definitely going to go far in racing in general, and I doubt it's just going to stick to sim racing.
That's it. I know that Mr. McCall has been looking to try and get Junior and Morgan into go-karting, and I think they'll do absolutely fantastic in the world of karting. Yeah, Gareth, we got a bit of a problem here. We're getting shown how it's done by the likes of Junior McCall, the young gun, and you and I are playing at the back of the field with each other, going and saying how's it, and passing each other cool drinks on the way past each other.
That's it, having a picnic, pulling off in there on top of Leeuwkop, just having a chat, watch the other guys come through.
Absolutely, another man to keep an eye on, Keegan Masters here in second place. Comes from quite a racing background in real life racing, multiple champion, and having an absolute fun time. Got into sim racing and just blasted past the competition, and has been on an absolute charge right the way around. And it's very different to see Keegan Masters without a steering wheel in the hand. I don't think it's possible. I think he goes to sleep with a steering wheel in his hands. That's for certain. Third place is Daniel Rowe, an incredible competitor. Fourth place
Well, I love to see it. The little Honda of Team Tryhard Racing, Paul Gerber, up in 4th place. I got a big smile on my face. I love the Honda being all the way up there. And Paul's showing that it is definitely the car to keep an eye on. And people underestimate the Honda. And he's showing that it, once in the best hands, it can be the most formidable car on the circuit. That's for certain. As he chases down Daniel Rowe in that big McLaren lying in 3rd place. So bit open up for our top 3. A bit further down, Luke Anderson chasing after Ryan Ottens of Team Kai K. And it looks like Ryan Ottens managing to break away from Bernard King and Mark Antle. And now has got the clean air just to keep the drive on. Further back, Mark Antle on that retro slipstream. Ferrari trying to keep Barber at bay and also put pressure onto the back of Bernard King. Gareth, you've been in one of these trains before where you got pressure behind you and you're trying to put pressure in front of you. What's the sort of mindset that these drivers, well, Mark Antle in particular, has to take in terms of being aggressive and defensive at the same time, if it's even possible?
Well, I suppose you just want to stay behind the car in front of you for a bit just to see where the weak points are, where's a good place to overtake. And I suppose it also depends on the driving style, you know, and how comfortable you are on the track. Oh dear, and Antle unfortunately not so comfortable sliding out. Oh, being able to get himself back in the right position and back on the track again. Unfortunately struggling there somewhat, and I think that is a result of what you had just mentioned, trying to keep an eye on the car in front of you. When can I take a gap? And also being cognizant of the driver behind you, who would also be playing mind games on you, showing himself in your left mirror, right mirror, so you don't quite know where to swerve. And this is the result, losing a bit of focus. Oh dear, as we see another car spun out. In fact, I think that was the same Ferrari that Antle had touched in the earlier corner. Luckily, he's got himself back onto the track and in the right direction. So he just needs to try and keep all 4 on the track.
So the Ferrari's fading out towards the ending of the race. But Gareth, I think we can firmly say we put our foot in our mouths, good and proper. And I think Alan Patterson would agree with us on this one. It's called commentator's curse, and I think we just used it. Mark Antle, I do apologize on behalf of Raceface for commentator's curse from Gareth and myself.
No such thing. We wish them all the best of luck. We don't want to see incidents, and you know, there's nothing exciting about guys taking each other out.
You know, no, but commentator's curse is you can talk about how amazing a driver is, and something does happen. So.
And we have another drive-through, Mr. Skitter.
Mr. Skitter getting the drive-through, and that's from track limits as well. Just dropping a wheel over the curb just a little bit too much. Unfortunately, it impacts her. And if you think about it, Skitter was leading the field at one point. Then did the pit stop, came out towards the middle of the grid. Now with the drive-through going and landing up in 15th place, and after the drive-through, you can be sure 16th place is going to be on the cards for him, with Van Wyk chasing him down, going, you know, Van Wyk in that Lexus. I'm not a big fan of the Lexus anymore due to Kyle Army, but going and driving with some great support for Cancer, so big ups to them for that. And also Mark Hanbury as well for the Cancer in the number 207 Black Widow Racing Lamborghini. And we touched on it a little bit on last week Thursday for the support, and they've definitely gotten a lot of support from their fellow competitors going and saying thank you for driving with it, and noticing it. Take a look at this. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Skitter down to 17th position. My heart goes out to Skitter. This season has been one of the rough seasons for him. That's for certain.
Absolutely. Luckily, it is only the third race of the season, so a lot of time to try and make up some additional points. But one thing I do hope is that when he did that drive-through, that he didn't use up too much fuel doing that.
The poor
Might be
man's
problematic.
never going to live it down. He's never going to live it down. 50
And
meters before the line.
And is in my favorite color, so I definitely won't be forgetting Mr. Skitter for the rest of the season.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr.
Junior
Skitter, for
McCall.
giving us some conversation points here.
Well, Keegan Marston's 12.8 seconds behind Junior McCall. Has got Daniel Rose slowly creeping up 6.2 seconds, with Paul Herbert 4.4 seconds behind. So Keegan Masters losing a little bit of time to a third place, but just absolute like 10th of a second every lap. But losing out major ground to Junior McCall. That McLaren, that Mercedes is just absolutely eating Donington alive. But the race further back, Christopher Radloff, who's had pressure all race so far, now has got Krayling right behind him, who's well, doing everything he can to try and get by. Bago Krobler and Mark Antle all pushing in tow, and you can see Mark Antle ahead of Bago Krobler. But poor Christopher Radloff, I don't think this man has even taken a breath any part of this race. He's been holding his breath, trying to fight back. South Africa, some of South Africa's finest sim racers, all duking it out. Bago Krobler up on the inside of Mark Antle, but Mark Antle able to close the door and immediately get back in tow. Absolutely brilliant racing going on here. And I think Radloff is starting to sweat in the chair. The hands are going tight against the steering wheel and starting to leave impressions on it. What do you think, Gareth?
Absolutely. Just looking at the track map, I think that's one of the only real worms that we see, as we see the rest of the field spread across the track. And again, I don't know if that's just a symptom of being on a track that they're not familiar with. Generally, you would see at least 2 or 3 worms across the field, but this little worm that we're in here is definitely the heat of the race.
That's it, and even further down you can see Tark Adam now wanting to get involved with the party as he started to catch up onto the back of Bago Krobler. Bago hunting down the back of Mark Antle, has to go a little bit hard on the brakes. Antle goes completely sideways, losing out the drive,
tenths.
and here comes Bago Krobler just blasting past for Queen and Country, who's going to be later on the brakes. Mark Antle goes and concedes, allows Bago to get by, gets into the toe, which is a very clever move, and is able to slingshot his way next to Bago. Will he be later on the brakes, trying to go on the outside? Not going to be a good move. Looks to try and do a little bit of a cutback on Bago Krobler. Bago immediately slams the door extremely hard. Mark Antle taking a big dive on the inside, and contact. Oh, unfortunately going to end in tears. Blocking up the circuit, and guys having to take evasive maneuvers. And I can tell you, Max at that point took a deep breath, and his Ferrari went, instead of 4 wheels, 2 wheels in between the battle of Bago and Mark Antle. Absolutely close racing, but unfortunately too tight of a circuit to turn into a battle there. And also, while we were busy talking about that, we could see Radloff losing out to Krayling. Krayling now managing to get by, so Radloff now on the hard charge to go and get his position back. Remember, the more that you're pushing, the more that you're trying to get past your competitor, the more you're wearing down those tires. As we see, it looks like Radloff taking a little bit too much curb, unsettles the car a little bit, loses a bit of pace as well. And this last 19 minutes is going to be a very, very long race for him, as he's gone from defense to now attacking to get onto the back of Krayling.
Tariq Adams still sitting in the top 10, sitting in 9th position with Hall right behind him, 1.6 seconds. If there is a car that I find struggles a little bit with tyres, it's the McLaren.
Well, as we saw, Adam just going and hanging on to the coattails of the battle between Mark Antle and Bago Krobler. and it all paid off eventually when the two had a little bit of coming together. One of the cars in the pits now coming out a bit of on the back markers. No, that's actually Bernard King. Bernard King was in the pits for a bit. Now Bernard King down into 18th place. Oh my heavens. That is that's a bit of an upset. We saw Bernard King a bit further up in the field. I wonder what went on with that Aston Martin that forced him to go into the pits and lose out a massive amount of time to the rest of the field.
Absolutely, might have been involved in a bit of argy-bargy as we see it coming down into under 20 minutes. I think the guys are going to start trying to push for positions as much as possible. Definitely don't want to give positions away.
No, it turns into a very difficult task. But one person we've got to bring here into the community that helped get a lot of these drivers a bit of practice time at Donington as a build-up to this race. Also just walked into the comm box, and that is Eddie Francis. Eddie Francis, thank you very much for joining us here at Raceface.
How's it, Steve? Sorry, I didn't realize this was the stream. I thought somebody was just streaming it on Discord.
Well, it's glad to have you here. Eddie Francis, for anyone that doesn't know, is part of the M&R community that works very close with Raceface, and also runs races on a Monday which line up with the Raceface calendar. And Eddie, you have a lot of these drivers going and racing with you guys and having a lot of fun in the Pro tier, the Pro-Am tier, or mainly Pro tier, such as Ryan Ottens, who's duking out with Anderson as we see the battle right in front. The guys really having to test their might and test their skills right here at Donington. It's definitely proving into a very difficult time. You've had a bit of driving experience here at Donington. For the later parts of the race, what do you think the driver's mentality has to be able to just get to the end and get that checkered flag?
Oh, look, Steve, Donington is a fairly new track to most ACC players. Those of us that have been playing since, let's say, Project 5 or iRacing might know Donington a bit better. So for tonight's race, much like we saw on Monday, it's a bit of a friction game. You've got to keep your head in it. It's a narrow track. It's got a lot of gravel and grass to slow you down. You just got to kind of keep the concentration up, keep the pressure on the guy ahead of you, and make it to the end.
That's Donington proving that it is a true driver's track, if I could put it that way, Gareth. It's a driver's track. It's all about how you can manage the car even through the faster corners, and also be able to slow it down just enough that you don't go felt farming the whole time. So definitely a very impressive track to test the skills, and what better way to show Donington than have our pros giving it their absolute all with some fantastic close racing, as we see here with Ryan Ottens and Anderson, who are literally nose to tail right the way through. They've been having a fantastic run this entire race.
No, absolutely. Ottens keeping it quite consistent. Addison, of course, climbing up the ladder somewhat. As I mentioned right in the beginning, last week was a little bit unfortunate for him, having secured pole position, and only unfortunately in the first turn to go and lose out and fall right to the back. This evening, of course, he's quite adamant he wants to get some points. So as long as he can stay on the track as we go to below 14 minutes left of the race, we're definitely going to see some guys trying to push that car a little bit harder on a track that, again, the guys aren't necessarily too familiar with. Definitely haven't done as many laps on this as the likes of Kyalami. I think we did enough Kyalami in one weekend to cover about 50 races, but this particular track, the guys still trying to find their feet. And you know, I think the key thing is, as Eddie was saying, I didn't actually get a chance to say hi to him before he disappeared again. So I'll just say hi virtually. I'm sure he's out there listening. But you know, I think the key thing is for these guys to just try and keep it cool in the last 10 minutes or so. I mean, that's when you can end up losing it. There's no need to really push it. We've seen a couple of drive-throughs come out already for going outside of track limits. That's definitely not something that you would want in the last 10 minutes when you're trying to keep your position and possibly attack the one in front of you. So the guys just need to try and keep it cool, keep it cool and see the race out.
Absolutely, and you can see the amount of marbles that's been kicked up, the excess rubber that's been thrown on the outside of the circuit. So there's definitely a driving line to go for. There's no 2-3 different driving lines. There's 1.5 driving lines, I would say. If you just take a look through the corner there, how much rubber and rubbish has been kicked off and thrown to the side of the circuit that I mean, you touch that, you could put one wheel on any of that stuff and your race is run. You would land up going and losing it. So this late into the race, this is where it starts getting very, very tricky, as you've got to stay in between the lines, if I could put it that way. You've got to color between the lines, same as your grade R teacher has taught you. And that's where it becomes a bit tricky when you're looking to try and do the passes and try and sneak up on the inside of a couple of drivers as well. So it's another aspect that Donington brings to the drivers. This circuit is a little bit of follow the leader. You've got to play follow the leader and put as much pressure onto the cars ahead of you to try and force them into a mistake, versus the likes of Spa or Monza, where you've literally got to just dive up on the inside and try and push your way through. This is a lot more of a thinking game, and hope they're looking at their rearview mirror a lot. As we see Max in that Ferrari trying to keep it all together. He's really pushing hard. He's got Hall just in front of him with that big Bentley, who's trying to keep it all in check. Right in front of them is Tark Adam. And chasing behind, Bago Krobler in 12th place, Mark Antle in 13th place, but Mark Antle 3 seconds off. So I wonder if Mark Antle sustained a little bit of damage from the earlier contact with Bago Krobler and is just not able to settle that Ferrari down enough through the corners to make up the ground, because he's definitely going backwards down the field.
No, absolutely. We can actually see his last time being a 1:28.4, which actually isn't too far off the pace. Most of the guys sitting around about that within the 1:28s. But, you slip out, you lose a couple of positions, and to your point, trying to get that rhythm again at times can be very difficult. And that's obviously when the guys behind you, they sniff that and they'll just put their nose in where it doesn't quite belong, so to speak, and just unsettle you a little. So, the key thing again is just maintain those lines, keep the four wheels between those two lines, and just maintain consistency.
Well, let's give the guys at home a little bit of a fright. Gareth, you're an AM driver, I'm an AM driver, and these are absolute cream of the crop pros. What did Junior McCall do as his time?
Well, his best time is a 1:26.8. I wouldn't be able to tell you what my time is. I don't even know if I have all 3 stars on this track. I think I might only have 2, so definitely haven't done too much racing on this one. But sitting on a 1:26, I mean, that's pretty much 1:26.8, definitely the quickest across the board, with majority sitting with 1:27s and 1:28s. I don't know if I'd even be able to break the 1:30.
I can tell you this now. Junior McCall did that with a full load tank. All right. The quickest time I was able to pull off with 5 liters left in the tank was a 1:29.9. with 5 liters left in the tank. Now that tells you the pro drivers are able to maintain these incredible lap times with a huge amount of fuel in. And as the fuel starts to come off, the cars are getting faster and faster. Yes, the tires are starting to drop off a little bit more, but these drivers are able to keep the consistent fast pace. And commentator's curse kicks in. Sorry,
Steve,
Keegan
you need
Masters,
to bite
who
that tongue.
catches a slide. I'm going to start eating my shoe. Which one should I start with, the left or the right? I'll leave it up
Start
to the
with the
comment
laces.
section. But Keegan Masters going and managing to catch the Porsche at the last minute, and absolutely incredible. But it shows that the Porsche, towards the end of the race, now starting to feel it as the back kicks out. Definitely a rough run for him, but he's able to keep it going. Daniel Rowe in that McLaren is starting to chase onto the back of him, 3.9 seconds, so he has eaten into the time of Keegan Masters. Will he be able to push it just that little bit more for the next 7 minutes and 20 seconds to be able to move up into second place? Now we saw Daniel had a great run come the round number 2 last week, and he's hoping to get a little bit further up through the field for this week as he wishes to extend the points for the racing.
Well, I can just imagine. I'm actually not too sure who all is sitting with which weight ballast at the moment, but I think possibly in the future we should put ballast on all of the hybrid cars. What do you think?
They are incredibly quick. I've got to go hats off. Even with ballast on these cars, they're able to really push themselves that little bit more every step of the way. And the ballast system is to bring the grid closer and closer together. But what it's shown is these drivers are able to take that ballast and push their limits, push into those limits and push beyond the limits and get faster and faster to try and open those spaces once again. I think at this point you're gonna have to take lots and lots of lead and around about 80 kgs of ballast to be able to bring these cars right into one another. That's the only way you're going to slow down the grid significantly enough to make a massive impact. I think at the moment the drivers have learned to overcome the challenge and utilize it to their benefit. So hats off to the pro drivers in showing how they can race, how to push it to the next level and also climb their way up. I already got told left shoe, I must have my left shoe. Okay.
And in hindsight, perhaps you shouldn't do the shoelace first because you'd want to pull the shoe out with the shoelace. So maybe a bit of a tip there.
Oh, Gareth, you meant to be my friend.
I am. I'm helping you take the shoe out again. Eat the shoe first. Leave the lace last.
Absolutely. And take a look at this. Mark Ansel's got Van Wyk pushing right onto the back of him and trying to make up a bit of ground. So Van Wyk really doing everything he can. But Ansel having a bit of a rough time and fallen way down the field. Bernard King down into 18th place, which is absolutely frightening to see. And this tells you how a race can change so quickly. You know, one little mistake, one shot into the wall can set you back so far back in your race. One drive-through penalty or a miscalculated pit stop can really put you down further into the field, and it takes it out from you massively. So it's, you know, this is what it is. It's the guys really pushing the limit, and it shows how close the field is to one another as we head into the final 3 minutes and 53 seconds left of this race. And I think the positions are reasonably set in stone at the moment, unless, and I'm going to have the right shoe if I say this one, but I'm going to, unless something happens, I think the drivers should finish within these positions, unless there's a major mess. So, Gareth, please tell me I'm not going to eat my right shoe here. What is your thoughts for the final 3 minutes and 18 seconds?
Well, we're going to see some guys obviously trying to push for positions. There's a lot of space between the top guys. So whether we see a change there is still to be seen. And again, that'll have to be quite a big incident for something like that to happen. Bernard King, oddly enough, sitting 4 laps behind the leader. So unfortunately, him not having a good run this evening. And we see another drive-through coming from Mr. Grobler in his black and blue Hybrid Academy car, Bentley. Definitely not the right time to get this.
Absolutely frightening. Bego Grobler with a drive-through penalty. Last 2 minutes of a race. Oh my heavens. Now, he's got 2 options. It's either he does the drive-through penalty and tries to keep going, or if the race ends, he's going to have a time added to his current race time. He decides to just get the penalty over and done with, not to affect his race too much, which I think is the better call than trying to push it right down to the wire and letting the game add time onto you. Just get it over and run with. Get back out and try and salvage the remaining parts of your race, as we see our first place man come out and immediately get caught behind Bego Grobler. So Junior McCall
Gets
having
lapped
to
again.
climb on the anchors to get past Bego Grobler. But as you pointed out, lapped again. So far on the lead lap, Junior McCall, Daniel Rowe, Keegan Masters. But from 9th place down, all the drivers have been lapped by the front end of the field. That is absolutely frightening.
This Junior McCall is relentless. He's had an excellent go at it this evening. Luckily, not too many issues. So he's been able to maintain it, keep good pace throughout the race. Kept his nose clean, been able to get through the field and do a couple of those lapping of the back markers. I mean, now currently sitting on 53 laps with Bernard King on 49. So at least it's not as bad as getting lapped, I think, 30 odd times, which is what happened to us over the weekend. It was fantastic, sitting with probably about 30 cars odd that's constantly lapping you. This obviously being an 80-minute race, so seeing a lot of overlapping doesn't really happen, as we now go into the last lap, last 20 seconds of the race, and McCall now putting in his last lap. So in essence, we're looking at another just over a minute left for this 3rd round of season 6 at Donington.
Absolutely, and I think we should go to 3rd place. Looking at a bit of action there, Daniel Rose got pressure from Paul Herber. Paul up into 3rd place, Masters into 4th. And now Paul Herber, after a bit of a relentless run in the Honda, is eyeing out that 2nd place of Daniel Rowe. So ladies and gentlemen, we are going to see the battle that has raged on for many seasons. Team Tryhard Racing versus the Hybrid Academy team. This is going to be interesting. McLaren versus Honda, 2 teams that they give each other a bit of a tough time in the Discord, out of all good fun. But out here on the circuit, they really are showing what they can do. Junior McCall now making his way around the final parts of the circuit, has run absolutely faultlessly after his brother's retirement. You can see flashing his lights, can be a happy camper with this one. One more turn. Ladies and gentlemen, 1st place goes to the ATK Academy team, Junior McCall taking the win.
Seeing his regular little bob and weave as he goes over that finish line. Love it.
Absolutely. Now coming down to the wire, will Paul Herber have enough momentum to get into that second place. Daniel Rowe having to go very defensive, trying to close the door, get the drive back on. Paul trying to keep in the toe, get into that slipstream, has got a massive gap. I don't think he's going to be able to do it. Hard on the brakes, trying to carry the momentum through. Got a bit of understeer, and you could see Daniel Rowe taking second place, Paul Herber into third place, coming across the line. Keegan Moss, oh no,
dear.
please do not tell me so, do not tell me so. Oh no. This Porsche is going very, very slowly.
On
No.
fumes, Mr. Masters. Do we need to get up and help you? No? Is he going to make it?
He's just absolutely.
Fantastic.
Once
You got to
again,
love the drama.
That fuel calculation towards the end. Gareth, question, how much are you paying the drivers to work out these fuel calculations? Because
Clearly
we've
not
seen
enough.
it now, two races in a row, we've had fuel right down to the wire. First to a Skitter, second goes to Keegan Masters. Keegan had that extra half a litre to just push himself across the line. My heavens, what a race here at Donington for our Raceface GT3 season. Absolutely fantastic. Third race in, and it's absolutely been one of the great races that we've seen. Gareth, we've got to say a big thank you to our sponsors, Speed Labs, Resource Complete, Racing Club International, Smart Statement Watches, TGN Racing Simulators, and we also got to say a thank you to our spectators joining us out here on YouTube, and also to the drivers and teams actively participating with us here at Raceface as well. Gareth, you got to give us your closing thoughts on that race.
Well, let me tell you what an interesting race that was. It was great to see these guys out here trying to find their feet. And as the race went through, you can see the guys definitely got a lot more comfortable with their setups, with the corners, with the track in general. But man, what an interesting race. Let me tell you. I think every week in and week out, we're seeing serious consistency. Junior McCall again pulling off a stunner. Just a great race, and thank you very much, Steve, for joining us. Really appreciated the company here. It's always great. It was fantastic to have Eddie pop in. I think we should definitely send out an invite next time so he can stay a little bit longer. But thank you very much, and thanks again to everyone that's watching. Looking forward to next week, where we will be round 4. And just to quickly double check to inform everyone, so next week is Spa, so that should be a very interesting one. Hopefully there is no rain, but I think this week we're going to see a little bit of a shuffle with some of the teams with additional points coming in, although I definitely don't see the Hybrid Academy boys dropping out of the top 10 anytime soon.
That's absolutely it, and thank you to everyone joining us. Gareth, it's an absolute honor being with you. I do apologize once again for the mic issues from my side. That is a big F in chat for me. I do apologize to you guys on behalf of Raceface and myself. But Gareth, once again, absolute honor being in the commentary box with you, with the amazing insight and skill that you have. And look forward to the next one as we take on Spa-Francorchamps and seeing our pro drivers do what they do best. Absolutely dominate the sim racing scene here at Raceface. From my side, Stephen Koenig, I would like to say good morning, good afternoon, and definitely good evening, everybody.
Good evening, and hasta la pasta.